which is our plenary reflection. We are greatly honored to have Kisha Lashley here, an associate professor at the McIntire School of Commerce at the University of Virginia, to talk to us about how qualitative research can be emancipatory. Welcome here, Kisha.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I think it's great that we're able to connect in this way, even across distances. It's an amazing use of technology. So thank you, Stina, for arranging this. Do you want me to just get into it?
Yeah, just get going. Like we have a few people who are just joining, but maybe some people just get so excited about being out in their breakout groups and they're just having these great discussions. And so it might take them just a little while to join us back in. But in the interest of time, I think that you should just get started and people can kind of wander in when they're done in their breakout rooms.
Yeah, sounds good. So I think these are exciting times for people who do qualitative research and for people who are interested in qualitative research. I mean, for one thing, as we've seen over the last few years, qualitative research has been gaining more visibility in our field. And we see this because also we have designated editors at many of our top journals who are qualitative scholars who are trained in that regard. And so when I was asked to do this, I thought about what's next? What does that mean for us as qualitative scholars? What does that mean for businesses? And so I wanted to take a step back for a bit and think about what qualitative research is good for. It's great for a really deep understanding of context. And I think that becomes even more important as we think about our world as changing, as evolving. And we think about some of the changes that are on the horizon, particularly for business, because that's what we study and we have to be responsive to that world. So I wanted to zoom out for a bit to look at the globe that we exist within. And you can see that on this chart, there are two colors, one blue and one red. And the blue part, for the most part, is what's referred to as the global north. It's been called many things, the developed world, first world. Some of those titles change over time. And then the red would be what's now called, and also there are other words for it, the global south or developing world, etc. And why is that important? Well, for one reason, if we think about the global south and what it is, it houses 88% of the population. But we also know that for many of us who are in this space, we're affiliated with the North. Our theories are affiliated with the North. The work that we do is affiliated with the North. But surely, as we think about what the world looks like now and how it will change in the future, here's an example of what it looks like now. This is India's population, a country that is within what's called the global south. And we can see that a significant part of the population, over 80%, is younger than 50. If we also look at other places in the global south, Africa, for example, it has one of the world's fastest growing populations. And we're expecting that by 2030, it'll be home to nearly 1.7 billion people. And that significantly increases the spending power of those people. If we even just think about something like cell phones, we know that we live in a technological age, and the number of cell phones that are on the continent of Africa, surely that has to have implications for business and also for us as scholars. As another data point, if we look to the future, to say about 2050, we can see how the age of these populations will change. So by 2050, we're expecting about a third of the population between the ages of 15 and 24 to be on the continent of Africa. And we see similar trends in places like Asia. And then we can see what's considered the global north and where it lies in this chart. And so surely this has implications for businesses. And because we're within business schools, most of us, for us as scholars. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time to reflect on what those implications are, what they could be. I saw the university that I teach at, we have a corporate sponsor within one of my classes, and it's Hilton, the hotel conglomerate. Many of you may have heard of them before. Hilton, for example, is planning to build 65 new hotels in Africa within the next 5 years. Even within the global South itself, we see that trade is increasing significantly. And that number on the bottom there is correct. 2,525% increase in the trade between China and South America. But if we think about ourselves as scholars and the work that we do, we know that the dominant paradigm is one where, for the most part, we focus on generalizability. So we have theories and we expect them to apply broadly. But again, go back to that map that we were looking at before. Remember, if you're in the global north, we constitute about 12% of the global population. And so then we have to ask ourselves, to what extent is the knowledge that we're developing generalizable to those parts of the world? Because if we think about the differences between the North and South, we know that there are differences in terms of the economies. We know that there are differences in terms of culture. We know that there are differences in terms of values. And this is where I think that as qualitative scholars, there are so many opportunities on the horizon for us to take what we know, to take our craft, and to utilize it in ways that can be emancipatory. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means later on. But I want to give a few examples of where I see that coming in and to draw on some of the stuff that I am interested in and where I've seen where my expertise in qualitative research can be beneficial. So as one example, I grew up on a tiny little island in the Caribbean, Dominica, and I've wanted to do research in that space for quite a while, and it wasn't the right time, but now I'm looking seriously into it. In 2017, the island was destroyed by a hurricane. And right around that time, the government said, okay, well, we're gonna become the world's first climate resilient country. And so I'm interested in understanding what that means from a stakeholder perspective, from meaning making, from all of that. But then one of the issues that I realized right off the bat is that the data just doesn't exist. A lot of the work that I do, I draw on archival sources as well, but in this context doesn't exist because nobody's archiving data on this island or the context. And so then it takes us back to qualitative research 101, the type of stuff that I did, which I still do. I was trained in grounded theory. I still do that. I've brought in all of these different data sources, and now I have to go back to the ground level where it's interviews, meeting with people, building relationships to try to understand what that means. So as we think about areas in the global South, there's also a recognition that sometimes the data just doesn't exist. And we have to go in and we have to collect the data, do that grunt work, do the dirty work of collecting the data and we could try to do surveys. But again, if we're taking that approach, it also means that we're coming in with ideas of how things should be. We're creating these hypotheses which may not hold in these different contexts. The second one is qualitative research. Another strength is for understanding the meanings, not just the actions, for digging really deeply into a context and in ways that we wouldn't be able to do with some other methods. And with this one, there's another project that I'm working on to try to understand is in the context of yoga. And it's to try to understand what happens when there's a scandal that implicates the leader of the guru, so to speak, within that field. Many of the practitioners are in the West, but in order to get a deep understanding of something that's so deeply rooted in culture, for me, it was important to go to India and to work with other students and with the teachers to understand the nature of that relationship, the relationship between the teacher and the student, something that I could not fully appreciate just being here in the United States where I'm based. And so as we think about opportunities in those areas, again, qualitative research is a tool for having this really deep understanding, for building relationships and for learning from the people, not necessarily going in with our own ideas of how things should be, but going in as truly as students to understand what is there right now and how we can learn from what is being done in those areas. Third, for understanding complexity. We know that we live in a world that's increasingly complex. There are so many people right now who are interested in, we talk a lot about, grand challenges. There are scholars that are interested in grand challenges. I gave the example of Dominica before, which is a small island of population about 60,000. But in trying to understand climate resilience is not just about Dominica, because Dominica has all of these stakeholders, many of them not within Dominica. Because the definition of a grand challenge means that it happens at a global scale, and there are stakeholders across the board who they're either contributing to the issue or they're suffering because of the issue. And so to understand these really complex situations, qualitative research, especially grounded theory, case studies, those are opportunities to go in and understand the nuances of the complex, things that we cannot control away. So in many instances, we control. For context, this is an opportunity to the context is the point, and the complexity is the point. And then finally, qualitative research is an opportunity to expand beyond our Western-centric theorizing. Again, when we think about 88% of the world's population being in the global South, and we think about what does that mean for the theories, say, around governance and corporate social responsibility and organizational behavior and so on. Again, we know that in these places, culture is different, values are different, et cetera. So we would also expect that our theories may not play out in the same way. And so if we're starting off from a point where we're developing hypotheses and we're trying to test them out in a large scale, then we may be missing certain important information. And we may also be missing opportunities to learn from what's being done in other areas. And there are potentially learning opportunities that we can bring back to the West as well, so that we can further add nuances to the theories that we have. So this is a quote in this paper. These authors were talking about the importance of context, and it talks about management research is often assuming the universal applicability of our mostly Western-centric concepts and theories. So again, qualitative research, I think, provides an opportunity to move beyond and to expand those. So I started off by talking about qualitative research as emancipatory. And so what does that even mean? To emancipate, to break away from any controlling influences, whether traditional norms, beliefs, or other forms of constraints. And so see it as an opportunity, qualitative research as an opportunity to question some of the beliefs that we have, some of the theories that we have, to go into these spaces and to learn new things. Another definition that's also related to that is an opportunity to challenge existing norms and structures and to create more just and equitable societies. I mentioned before about grand challenges. And so we have the opportunity as scholars to shed lights on some of these issues that affect us all on a global scale, and hopefully to create more just and equitable societies on account of that. And I know that I'm pretty much out of time. So just want to say thank you for this opportunity, and hopefully you found this to be interesting or valuable, perhaps.
Thank you so much, Kisha, for this really thought-provoking presentation. I think that very interesting in beginning to think about taking a different perspective, looking at the global South and not just having this very Western perspective on management. And if we look in our top journals in North America, there is a great bias to our studies that are conducted in the US, even to the extent that if the data is collected in the US, people don't say where it was collected. Whereas if it was collected in any other country, you have to specify the country in which it was collected. Just show the kind of, taken for grantedness of this westernized perspective and beginning to think about. And I think you're right that qualitative methods are really great at capturing some of these grant challenges, where when you have these complex issues, it is actually very difficult to address with quantitative methods. So thank you so much. What we have now in the conference now is actually a coffee break. So just to give people the possibility to have a coffee, to run to the restroom. Of course, if you are thinking, oh, I really love the group discussion, I would love to talk with more people just during my break, you can also go either to the speed dating side or to one of the small group discussions. And we will then continue with our second panel at 11:45. And so you'll need to and in order to access that presentation, you will actually need to exit the Zoom room. So you cannot be in this particular Zoom room in order to come to the next presentation. You'll have to you'll have to exit. So anyways, take just a few minutes just to have a break, and then we'll see you all soon for the next panel.